Perfect. Hello, Hare Krishna, and welcome to See Through. This is our podcast where we talk about all kinds of spiritual matters. We talk with each other about spiritual matters, and we figure out how to see each other through, kind of walk each other through all of these spiritual texts, spiritual literatures, and we get a little bit of a handle on spiritual life, what that means for all of us. If we are not living in an ashram, or even maybe if we are living in an ashram, what does that mean for us? What does spiritual life mean? So, since the beginning of this podcast, we have been reading Krishna book, which I have seen as incredibly important because it helps us get to know our spiritual supreme bestie. If we want to have a relationship with someone and we have no idea who they are, and we just pop on in with, oh my gosh, I love you, it seems a little bit unhealthy. Just a little bit the opposite of rational, logical thinking. Now, love should not always be rational, but it should start off somewhere in the neighborhood of rationality. So we've got to get to know the people that we are in a relationship with, any kind of relationship. I remember being young, and at maybe 5 or 6, they used to ask me, you go to school, they ask you, what do your parents do for a living? One, I never knew what my mom did. I just could never wrap my head around it or figure it out. She worked in the justice system, in the jury duty division, and she was actually heading up this jury department. But as a 6-year-old, I could not figure that out for the life of me. And so I think it's I don't know, man. I don't know how to tell you all of that. I don't even know how to put that into words. I didn't even know what that was as a concept. And when they asked me what my dad did for a living, I think I said something akin to, he shoots people for a living because he was a photographer. So yeah. I feel like it's really important for us to get a handle on who we are actively making our relationship with in the most supreme way. Otherwise, people will say, what's your God like? And we're like, I don't know, shoots people for a living. And it can get kind of lost in translation. So, Krishna book is one of the best ways to get to know Krishna, to get to know what he likes, to get to know his dislikes, to get to know what makes Krishna happy, to get to know what puts Krishna into anxiety. Because how crazy is that? God gets put into anxiety? He does. It's true. And we will get into that as we read further along. But we've been developing really honestly this relationship with our supreme most best friend. And in doing so, we've been solidifying that relationship. The more we get to know about our friend, the more deeply in love we fall with our friend. And it's always the best pick me up. Reading these words and talking with all of you winds up to be the best pick me up of my day anytime we're able to do it. So we're here on this Monday. It's a new week, almost a new month. It's a new lunar cycle, and we've got all this kind of new energy. So I figure, why not? New chapter. We are in chapter 8 of Krishna book. This chapter is called Vision of the Universal Form. But this particular episode is going to be about promises from our Supreme Bestie. But we'll see how that comes into play. Okay. So this chapter starts off kind of in the middle of a sentence, but in the 2 previous chapters, we've been reading about how Krishna has been killing demons left and right. The boy is only 3 months old. But still, he's been killing demons left and right. He has been doing the supreme things since he was 3 days old. 3 days old was when a witch comes, a wicked witch. And she arrives and she tries to kidnap Krishna. And then she tries to nurse him with poisoned breast milk. I mean, you can't really make this up. Because I don't know anybody who would make that up. Like, it just seems so... Who would think of that? Who thinks of that? Like, who thinks of... You know what? You know what I think would be really cool? A wicked witch who flies around on like a tree limb, stump, and she goes around killing little babies with poisoned breast milk. It's an ingenious plan, actually, which is what stinks about it. And then sometimes she like eats the children. That, like, see, the whole thing. But so, like, who nobody's gonna make that up. And so sometimes we think about, stories or myth. And I, being a lover of stories, I wind up thinking there's no way. There's no way that there's not some truth to a lot of these stories. So 3 days old, Krishna happens to kill this wicked witch. He doesn't even have to drop a house on her. Go figure. He drinks the milk, and then he continues sucking, and then he sucks out her life heirs. Which, Ayurvedically, you need your life heirs for a lot of things. More than just breathing. But you need your life heir to create movement between your joints. You need your life heir so that your system will work properly. And without that life heir, you find it very difficult to live. So Krishna, at 3 days old, is able to subdue and kill this demon, who winds up being 12 miles long. That's really big. And then they had to go, there's one spiritual text which speaks about the fact that the residents of Vrindavan, once they realized that Krishna had killed this demon, and they realized that Krishna was on her chest, they had to go and hike up her body to go get him. Because if she was 12 miles long, you better believe, like, she was way high into the sky also. So they had to go hike several hours up her body to go and rescue the baby. I put rescue in quotes because he had just killed her. I don't think he needed rescuing. But they rescued him nonetheless. And then at about 3 months old, he kills another whirlwind demon. So he's been doing some things. So this chapter begins. After this incident, Vasudeva asked his family priest, Gargamuni, to visit the palace of Nanda Maharaj in order to astrologically calculate the future life of Krishna. So just right there, sometimes astrology gets a bad reputation. Spiritually minded people feel like, we don't need astrology. Just chant Hare Krishna, will be fine. Chanting Hare Krishna and you will be fine. Actually, yes, that's true. But also sometimes it's a good idea to get to know the forces that are working with or against you, or both, at any given moment. So much so that they even relied on astrology for Krishna. They even relied on astrology for Srila Prabhupada. So if all of these people have relied on astrology, we can also use it as a guide. We don't have to put all our eggs into that one basket, so to speak. But we can use it as a little bit of a roadmap to try and see, maybe we need to take a detour over here. So it's kind of good to just see it as a little bit of a guideline to help us. So as we continue, Gargamuni was a great saintly sage who had undergone many austerities and penances and been appointed priest of the Yadu dynasty. When Gargamuni arrived at the home of Nanda Maharaj was very pleased to see him and immediately stood up with folded hands and offered his respectful obeisances. He received Gargamuni with the feeling of one who is worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He offered him a nice sitting place, and when he sat down, Nanda Maharaj offered him a warm reception. Addressing him very politely, he said, "My dear Brahmin, your appearance in a householder's place is only to enlighten. We are always engaged in household duties and are forgetting our real duty of self-realization. Your coming to our house is to give us some enlightenment about spiritual life. You have no other purpose in visiting householders. Actually, a saintly person or Brahman has no business visiting householders who are always busy in the matter of dollars and cents. The only reason saintly persons and Brahmanas go to the place of a householder is to enlighten him. If it is asked, why don't the householders go to a saintly person or a Brahman for enlightenment? The answer is that householders are very poor-hearted. Generally, householders think that engaging in family affairs is their prime duty, and that self-realization or enlightenment in spiritual knowledge is secondary. Out of compassion only, saintly persons and Brahmans go to householders' homes. I kind of see this. You ever see someone and their surrender reminds you of everything else that is just extra or superfluous about your life? You ever see someone and their dependence on their spiritual relationship with the Supreme just reminds you that's like, wait a second, what have I been like? I've been like really racking my brain about how to make this work and this work and this work. And I've been like really engrossed in this and this and this. And all of that seems so superfluous when I look at this person and they're just so free in their faith. And I feel like it's kind of amazing that Nanda Maharaj is even looking at Gargamuni and having this realization that we are always concerned with, how do I make my family work? How do I make my village work? How do I make this work? How do I make that work? How do I take care of all of these cows? Millions of cows, so many cows. How do I take care? How do I pay my taxes? How do I do this? How do I pay for that? How do I make sure that not just my family, but my subjects, because he was pretty much chief of this village, how do I make sure that my subjects are all taken care of? And to see someone who seems to be so free from all of those worries really opens up our hearts. That's the job of a saintly person, is to be so steeped in faith that it opens up the hearts of others just by looking at them. One of our friends is saying that Srila Prabhupada is a retired householder himself, so it's interesting to admit these traits. But Srila Prabhupada, he would admit those traits often. He wasn't even sure about taking initiation from his own guru. He kind of thought, yeah, I'll do it later. Yeah, I'll do it after a certain time. Yeah, I'll do it after a certain... And finally, he kind of had to really surrender. And I had put up that meditation by Srila Prabhupada last week in honor of his Vyasa Puja, where he was talking about feeling that hesitancy. How in the world will I ever complete this order? Go to the West, preach Krishna consciousness to these people who have no concept of Krishna at all? How will they understand me? Moreover, how will the world view me as a retired householder? I'll be condemned. What am I supposed to do? I'm going to need help. I'm going to need reinforcements, all of these things. So Srila Prabhupada was often very, very real with his spiritual path and the ways that it was winding and meandering. It wasn't just a straight line. His guru gave him an instruction one day and the next day he carried it out. It took years, decades before Srila Prabhupada surrendered to that instruction. So if you feel like your spiritual progress is kind of taking years, that's natural. Doesn't have to happen overnight. Even for the pure devotees. Takes a little bit for some acceptance. Nanda Maharaj addressed Gargamuni as one of the great authorities in astrological science. The foretellings of astrological science, such as the occurrence of solar or lunar eclipses, are wonderful calculations, and by this particular science a person can understand the future very clearly. Gargamuni was proficient in this knowledge. By this knowledge, one can also understand what his previous activities were that are causing him to enjoy or suffer in this life. Nanda Maharaj also addressed Gargamuni as the best of the brahmanas. A Brahman is one who is expert in the knowledge of the Supreme. Without knowledge of the Supreme Absolute, one cannot be recognized as a Brahman. The exact word used in this connection is Brahmavidam, which means those who know the Supreme very well. An expert Brahman is able to give reformatory facilities to the subcastes, namely the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas. The Shudras observe no reformatory performances, which is something that was very interesting. I was reading in the Mahabharata recently, and they were saying that the Shudras were not even allowed to perform like tapasya. They weren't supposed to perform austerity. They weren't supposed to observe fasts. They weren't supposed to observe any of those things. Now, why? From the way I see it, Shudras lived an incredibly active life. They were hard-working people. And so sometimes that hard work in and of itself is the austerity. That working very hard is the austerity. Someone was asking, which Mahabharata was I reading? There is a Mahabharata by a devotee known as Purna Pragya. I'll just put the name in there. And he wrote a really cool Mahabharata. It's very in-depth and really nice and long. There's also another one by Krishna Dharma. Both of those I highly recommend. Krishna Dharmas is such a great read. It's just like really easy, engrossing storytelling. And Purna Pragya has so many of the kind of like, it's like taken all of the translations of the complete Mahabharata, which means that there's a lot of stories within stories. So it's like someone will ask a question, one question. It's like 4 stories within stories later, you have the answer to the question. And then we come back to the original question. So this is what kind of makes it a little bit longer. But I really actually like both of those. Both of those talk about how Krishna constantly saves the day. And there are so many sweet moments where we find out about Krishna in those Mahabharata renderings that I think are vital for us. In fact, I was doing a series on that Mahabharata many years ago, which we'll see. As we go through Krishna book, maybe we'll have to continue because there are so many things that come in where the 2 rivers meet. Because the Mahabharata you can't have without Krishna. So we'll see how it goes. But let's see, where were we? Ah, yes, Shudras. They were not supposed to perform any reformatory processes. Interestingly enough, we hear that according to Srila Prabhupada and so many of our previous spiritual teachers, everyone in Kali Yuga is born with the qualities less than a Shudra. So there are so many times where people say, can your sins really be eradicated just by fasting this one time? Can you really do this? What if your fasting is not complete? What if this is that? Now, Krishna can make sense of it all. Krishna understands that we aren't perfect. Krishna does not expect us to be perfect. Krishna does not demand perfection before he begins blessing us. And we'll see in so many cases, especially throughout this Krishna book, of stories where it seems like, well, that was a perfected spiritual person, but they're doing this, this, and this. And Krishna still blesses them. So Krishna understands who we are. The fact that we do these reformatory processes, even if we are fasting on an Ekadashi, even if we are taking up a half-day fast, whatever it is, right? If we're chanting a little extra, if we're just making the endeavor. Sri Krishna himself says, in this endeavor, there is no loss, no diminution. And a little advancement on the path is enough to save one from the most dangerous type of fear. He doesn't say you have to like perfect it and then I'll save you from the most. It's like a little advancement. Just the smallest advancement is enough. So if you're here and you're doing the best you can, that's enough. Krishna's whole purpose is to let us know that just do the best you can. I got a question recently. Someone was asking about Ekadashi. They said, oh, what if I fasted on all of the Ekadashis and did all this thing, but what if I didn't break my Ekadashi on time? My answer is always the same Krishna who reformed the workings of the universe to give us a day like Ekadashi when you could fast. I absolutely do not believe that is the Krishna who's going to say, look, I gave you this whole day. I change the workings of the universe. But if you didn't complete your fast before 10:45 a.m., that's it. I got nothing for you. Our Krishna is not going to do that. Just try your best. You do the best you can, and you leave the rest of the results up to Krishna, understanding, Krishna, I trust you. Krishna, I believe you. Krishna, I love you, and therefore I'm doing all of this, and I'm just going to do the best I can. It's all that Krishna's looking for. So we can continue. Let's see. The Brahman is considered to be the spiritual master or priest for the Kshatriya and Vaishya. Nanda Maharaj happened to be a Vaishya, and he accepted Gargamuni as a first-class Brahman. He therefore offered his two foster sons, namely Krishna and Balarama, to him to purify. Nanda stated that not only these boys, but all human beings, just after birth, should accept a qualified Brahman as a spiritual master. Upon this request, Gargamuni replied, Vasudev has sent me to see the reformatory performances of these boys, especially Krishna's. But if I do so, it may incidentally appear that Krishna is the son of Devaki, since I am Vasudev's family priest. By his astrological calculation, Gargamuni could understand that Krishna was the son of Devaki, which Nanda did not know. Indirectly, Gargamuni said that Krishna and Balaram were both sons of Vasudev. Balaram was known as the son of Vasudev because his mother Rohini was present there. But Nanda Maharaj did not know about Krishna. Gargamuni indirectly disclosed the fact that Krishna was the son of Devaki. Gargamuni also warned Nanda Maharaj that if he would perform the reformatory ceremony, then Kamsa, who was naturally very sinful, would understand that Krishna was the son of Devaki and Vasudev. According to astrological calculation, Devaki could not have had a female child, although everyone thought that the eighth child of Devaki was female. In this way, Gargamuni intimated to Nanda Maharaj that the female child was born of Yashoda and that Krishna was born of Devaki, and they were exchanged. Also, the female child, Durga, had informed Kamsa that the child who would kill him was already born somewhere else. Gargamuni stated, If I give your child a name, and if he fulfills the prophecy of the female child to Kamsa, then it may be that the sinful demon will come and kill this child also after the name-giving ceremony. But I do not want to become responsible for all of these future calamities. Interesting enough, they weren't going to happen anyway. But I kind of like that Gargamuni was like, but it won't happen because of me. they were going to happen anyway. Kamsa was going to send demon after demon after demon, but Gargamuni was like, but it's not going to be my fault. On hearing the words of Gargamuni, Nanda Maharaj said, if there is such danger, then it is better not to plan any gorgeous name-giving ceremony, like a grand affair. It would be better for you to simply chant the Vedic hymns and perform the purificatory process. We belong to the twice-born caste, and I am taking this opportunity of your presence. So please perform the name-giving ceremony without external pomp. Nanda Maharaj wanted to keep the name-giving ceremony a secret and yet take advantage of Gargamuni's performing the ceremony. I feel like this is so encouraging. You ever think about taking a big step in your life and you feel as though you're not sure if the whole situation is going to be safe? Like, I think I always remember somewhere around September, October, somewhere around there. I could never remember the exact week. All I remember is that every year, when it was time to go back to school in my college, they had a huge thing for Pride Week. And they would have like a whole coming out week. And then that whole week, everybody, left and right, everybody would be coming out. And I was always wondering, what if it's not safe? Like, what if you have to read the room first? Even when it was with Krishna, like they're reading the room, like, maybe with this demon king lurking and an arsenal of demons, maybe it wouldn't be best to bring attention to this divine wonderful child just yet. And so sometimes when we receive our blessings and when we are keeping them close to our hearts just for a little while, it's okay. It's absolutely okay. Because Nanda and Yashoda had been praying for a child for a long time. They were older. It actually should not have been medically possible for them to have had a child. And yet, they have the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They know he's special. They're looking at him. And they're also understanding, okay, you're right. Maybe we shouldn't draw too much attention to this child. Now they have already had some celebrations because Krishna came to Gokula. How can you really hide a jewel like Krishna? It is impossible. His brilliance and his effulgence is seen all throughout the entire universe. But due to the love in their hearts, they're thinking, maybe we just want to calm down a little bit and see how things play out. So if we've ever been in situations where we've gotten the blessing that we have been dreaming for so long, we can read the room. And if we are not so sure that there won't be such envious eyes on us all the time, we don't have to put it all out there. Like, I mean, isn't this a lesson for all of us living in this age of social media? Doesn't it take such like self-control not to immediately post about the thing? But sometimes we have to be able to look around and understand who is for us and who is not. And it's okay to have that discrimination. Like, we don't have to be in this situation where it's like, but everybody should just be for us. Not even everybody was for Krishna. So we can look at it. And it seems so encouraging to me that the family of Krishna was dealing with the same things we're dealing with now. This material world doesn't change for anyone, even God. When Gargamuni... Yes, so Nanda Maharaj wanted to keep the name-giving ceremony a secret and yet take advantage of Gargamuni's performing the ceremony. When Gargamuni was so eagerly requested by Nanda Maharaj, he performed the name-giving ceremony as secretly as possible in the cowshed of Nanda Maharaj. He informed Nanda Maharaj that the son of Rohini would be very pleasing to his family members and relatives, and therefore would be called Ram. So Ram means a reservoir of pleasure. Someone asked me recently, or actually they've been asking me for a long time. I posted a video about Lord Shiva. I love that it's Monday and we're talking about Lord Shiva. But Lord Shiva swallowed an entire ocean of poison, long story short. His dearest consort Parvati asks him, why did the poison have no effect on you? Now this is a rhetorical question. Of course she knows, right? She wouldn't have had or accepted an eternal consort if she didn't already understand. But for our benefit, she asks questions. Why did the poison have no effect? So because I'm always chanting the holy names and they are constantly in my throat, created a barrier, a protective seal. Poison can't get past. And so someone asked me, but the swallowing of the poison happened in Satya Yuga, which is roughly 3 yugas and many, many, many millions of years before Ram and Krishna appeared. How is it that he could... And I'm like, why do we not think that the names of Ram and Krishna are not eternal? Ram is simply a name for the Supreme Person. That means he is a reservoir of pleasure. So this name of Ram is always existing. This name of Krishna means that he is dark complexioned and all attractive. This name of Krishna is always existing. And the pastimes of Sri Ramachandra, the incarnation, and Sri Krishna, the source of all incarnations, are eternal. We have to stop thinking that the Vedic paradigm goes in chronological order. Srila Prabhupada makes a statement at the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam that none of this goes in chronological order. They only ever use chronological order to make it make sense for us. It goes in cycles. And so sometimes the cycle where the cycle begins and ends is subjective. So Krishna doesn't have to work by our conception of time. And so that is the long and the short answer of why, how. How could Lord Shiva be meditating on the names of Ram and Krishna? Because those names are attributes of the Supreme Person. And this is where we get into promises from our Supreme Bestie. So Nanda Maharaj was informed that the son of Rohini would be very pleasing to his family members and relatives, and therefore would be called Ram, a reservoir of pleasure. In the future, he would be extraordinarily strong, and therefore would be called Baladev. This is a promise. Not just a name of our Supreme Person, but an attribute. He is a reservoir of all pleasure. He gives pleasure to all those who are near to him. We are very near and dear to the Supreme Person. So this is a promise. Oh my Lord, oh my friend, you give pleasure. You sweeten the lives of everyone that's near and dear to you. Well, I am near and dear to you. If our lives need a little sweetening today, we should be calling out, oh Ram. If we are feeling weak today, oh Baladev, you are the source of all strength. We need help. We need to be given some of that sweetness. We need to figure out a way in which we can become spiritually strong. And we can't do it on our own. But we've heard that you've been given this transcendental attribute, which is not limited by space or time, geographical location. You are seated within everyone's heart. And I know absolutely you can give this blessing over our lives. So please fulfill the purport of your name. There are so many songs. There's one song by Narottam Das Thakur, who is a great poet. And he was a second generation devotee in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's devotees. And he wrote a song and he says, you are called the most merciful. You're called the friend of the fallen. Well, I am fallen. Other than me, who deserves your mercy? And if you can't give me your mercy, then why should you have this name that is called the most merciful and the friend of the fallen? Knowing you as the Supreme Person who can give strength and who is all strong, then that means that you give that strength to the weak. I am weak. And so not only is this just a name, but this is a promise. Please, my Lord, fulfill the purport of your name. Show up in my life. So I really like this section because we're about to hear a lot more attributes of Krishna and Balaram. And we can use those against our Supreme Bestie when we are in need of help and support. Because, I mean, what are friends for? In the future, he would be extraordinarily strong, and therefore he would be called Baladev. Gargamuni said further, because your family and the family of the Yadus are so intimately connected and attracted, his name also will be Sankarshan. This means that Gargamuni awarded 3 names to the son of Rohini, namely Balaram, Sankarshan, and Baladev. So Sankarshan is one who joins things together. If you feel like you've been separated from family members, people who feel like family members, all those who are near and dear to you, and you would like to be reunited with them, we can pray to Lord Sankarshan. Oh Lord Sankarshan, you are perfect at joining even ideas. You are perfect at joining things that seem to be polar opposites. Oh my Lord, work in my life. Help me find a solution to all of this. Are we reading these spiritual texts and looking for promises to help ourselves? Or are we just looking at ways in which we feel condemned by the Supreme Person? I feel a lot of us wind up looking for the condemnation, but we're not looking for the promise. I kind of want to switch that. I want to look for more promises, less condemnation. Because Krishna, to be honest, he doesn't really have much time to condemn people. That's set for the laws of material nature. Krishna doesn't have time to condemn people. He's too busy loving people. He's just way too busy having loving relationships with an unlimited variety of spirit souls. He's too busy looking for love, looking to be loved, looking to give love. That is his function. So Gargamuni gave these names, but he very carefully did not disclose the fact that Balaram had also appeared in the womb of Devaki and was subsequently transferred to the womb of Rohini. Krishna and Balaram are real brothers, being originally sons of Devaki. Srila Prabhupada answers a very poignant question which we often get. How is it that if Krishna was born of Yashoda and Balaram was born of Rohini, that they're now and forever brothers? Srila Prabhupada wisely answers that question. But also, from a spiritual point of view, they're never separate from one another. Gargamuni then informed Nanda Maharaj, as far as your son is concerned, this child has taken different bodily complexions in different yugas or millennia. First of all, he assumed the color white, then the color red, and then the color yellow, and now he has assumed the color black. Besides that, he was formerly the son of Vasudeva. Therefore, his name should be Vasudeva, as well as Krishna. Some people will call him Krishna, and some will call him Vasudeva. But one thing you must know, this son has had many, many other names and activities due to his different pastimes. Gargamuni further hinted to Nanda Maharaj that his son would also be called Giridhari because of his uncommon pastime of lifting Govardhan Hill. He told him this. The boy was about 3 months old. He had not yet lifted Govardhan Hill, but amazingly, he was able to figure that out. So when the people tell me, oh, but how could this happen? This happened. And so I'm like, look. It doesn't need our timeline. It's not a line. It's a circle. And it's a spiral circle. It's like one of those optical illusion circles where you have those knots that it's all intertwined and then there's never really a starting point. You just kind of decide, okay, we're going to start here. So this is kind of what's happened. How can you start and end the infinite? Krishna is infinite and unlimited. How do you start and end that? We can't. But for the purposes of not overloading our brains and so they turn on into mush and leak out of our ears, we have a starting point and we have an ending point, all in quotes. So we have to understand that there is not actually a starting and ending. Krishna's pastimes are eternal and unlimited. But we hear that Krishna is going to be all attractive. Vasudeva is also a state of consciousness. Vasudeva is the controller of the heart. He is the conductor of the mind and the senses. And so now we can call upon the Lord, oh Krishna, oh all attractive one. When we're feeling apathetic about life, when we feel as though there is nothing that can give us any hope or even attract us, you know, when they ask you the questions, have you become disinterested in any of your previous activities? And you're like, all of them. I became disinterested even in involuntarily breathing. You know, like when you're having those moments where you feel so disinterested in everything and apathetic about it all. We can pray to Krishna. Krishna, you are all attractive. Bring back these attractive qualities of my life. Help. O Vasudeva, conduct the affairs of my heart and my mind. Conduct my consciousness. Bring it to a better place, rather than this deep, dark tunnel that I seem to be navigating my way through. Remind me that I'm not on my own. So these are promises, all of these names, and then we have Giridhari, because of his uncommon pastime of lifting an entire hill. O Giridhari, you've lifted mountains that some of us will see in Vrindavan. It's a big hill. Just walking around it, you're like, this is going on for a really long time. I've been walking for a long time. I chose to do it when the temperature was like 100 degrees, so that was also a problem. But like you feel like you're like, I'm walking for a long time, it's a bad idea. Why did I choose this? But Krishna lifted it for 7 days. So then we know my problems are nothing for you. My issues are nothing. You can take this life and you can lift it just as you lifted that hill. Give me purpose. Give me protection. Give me your shelter. Give me the umbrella of your mercy. You are forever known as Giridhari because you saved your people. Save me. You promised. I feel like our job is to hold our friend accountable to his promises. You know, you have those accountability partners. That's us with Krishna. Except for Krishna has made all of these preemptive promises. And I feel like it's our job as accountability partners to hold Krishna accountable to all of these promises. I just tell him, and any given day, I'm like, look, you've got to fulfill the purport of this name or this name or this name because I'm doing my part. My part is to be limited and fallible and lacking. I play that part really well. Your job, Krishna, is to be unlimited, infallible, and providing. So help. Like I'm doing what I can do. Okay? I can only do my very best to lack. Now, Krishna, you promised you would carry what I lack and preserve what I have. Well, just consider me a backpack then. Gargamuni continued to say, We can't forget the rest of this paragraph. Since Gargamuni was an astrologer, he could understand everything, past and future, and thus he said, I know everything about his activities and names, but others do not know. This child will be very pleasing to all the cowherd men and cows. One who gives pleasure to the cows and the senses is named Govinda, just so we're clear. Being very popular in Vrindavan, he will be the cause of all good fortune for you. Because of his presence, you will overcome all kinds of material calamities, despite opposing elements. One more time. He will be the cause of all good fortune for you. That's promise number 1. Because of his presence, you will overcome all kinds of material calamities, despite opposing elements. Promise number 2. In paragraphs full of promises, are we writing them down? Are we figuring them? Are we like committing them to memory? Because it's gonna happen. But you should know that Krishna appearing in your life will be the cause of all good fortune for you. I promise. I can say that because he promised already. Because of his presence in your life, you will overcome all kinds of material calamities, despite opposing elements. There will be opposing elements, and I promise you, with Krishna's presence in your life, you will overcome all of them. Like I said, I can only promise this because he already promised it. Hold him to his promise. Remind him of his promises. Oh my Lord, you promised me. And I'm seeing a lot of opposing elements right now. Like so many elements. All the elements are opposing. So Lord, any moment now, I'm just expecting you to swoop on in and be the overcoming element from these opposing elements. Gargamuni continued to say, my dear king of Braj, in his previous births, this child many times protected righteous persons from the hands of rogues and thieves whenever there was political disruption. So how foolish are we to think that Kali Yuga is the only time that has rogues and thieves and political disruption? This was a yuga ago. Just so we're clear, the things that we are seeing right now are not new. It is not like any of this is new to Krishna. Like, oh, Krishna, you'll never believe what happened. He already knows. Been there, done it, bought the t-shirt. He's seen it and saved loads of people already from the same things that we are going through, which is good because then that means he has experience. We don't want somebody who's like inexperienced in saving the day. We can't have a hero who's just kind of like blindly like learning on the job. Like, well, I don't know how to save you, but I guess we'll learn together. Krishna is not like that. Krishna doesn't have to learn while on the job. Krishna already has saved countless people from the very things that we are going through, that we think we are alone in. There's nothing that Krishna has not seen. Nothing he has not already saved people from. I heard something today that said, God had the solution before we even had the problem. This is the purport of this statement. In countless millenniums, Krishna has had the solution before we've even come in contact with this particular problem. He has saved people as examples before we've even had this issue. Before we've even come into knowledge of what was bothering us, Krishna already had the pep talk ready. Question is, are we going to turn to Krishna and accept the pep talk? Or are we going to stay stuck in our sadness? Do we want to believe that Krishna can save us? Or do we just want to argue? Sometimes we find that being angry is easier than grief and accepting the grief. So we cling to our anger. No, the solution can't be that easy. It can't just be like, oh, surrender and allow Krishna to make me feel better. That's not how things work. Or that's exactly how things work. If we allow it, if we give Krishna the wherewithal and the room and the space to be there for us. But we should also know that getting frustrated is fine. It's part of who we are as the fallible, lacking people. It's okay. We're doing our part. So, your child is so powerful that anyone who will become a devotee of your boy. Okay, see? This is not past tense. It's not even present tense. It's the future. Gargamuni is talking about us talking to each other on the internet over 5,000 years ago. Anyone who will become a devotee of your boy will never be troubled by enemies. Yeah. So now we kind of just have to look at so many of the enemies, which can include the mind, and remind ourselves, oh, no. This is not meant for me because I'm a devotee of Krishna. That's it. There's no but. But what if you still eat onions and garlic? I don't care. You're a devotee of Krishna. And so even the enemy of the mind cannot touch you. Oh my God, what if you ate eggs from the time you were born until the time? I don't care. You're still a devotee of Krishna. It doesn't matter what you have done. It doesn't matter what you have said. In this moment, you're a devotee of Krishna. And so that enemy cannot touch you, even if it is the enemy of the mind, especially if it is the enemy of the mind. Because that enemy is insidious and crafty and tricky, and it snakes its way in. Even when all the other enemies have been subdued, we are still struggling with the mind. And the mind comes in and says, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are to be calling on all of these promises? You really think God's going to come save you? Who are you? I am a devotee of Krishna. I am Krishna's near and dear one. I am Govinda's person. That's who I am. So sometimes you have to wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, and remind yourself of who you are. Especially because the mind is going to ask you every day, who do you think you are? Who do I think I am? Not think, who do I know I am? I'm Krishna's devotee. And we have it on the good authority of Gargamuni that anyone who is a devotee of Krishna, these enemies cannot even touch them. So you should know that the solution is already there. Even if you can't see it, that solution is already there. You are already protected. You've already been saved from whatever it is. Just as demigods are always protected by Lord Vishnu, the devotees of your child will always be protected by Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, This child will grow in power, beauty, opulence, in everything on the level of Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, I would advise that you protect him very carefully so that he may grow without disturbance. In other words, Gargamuni informed Nanda Maharaj that because he was a great devotee of Lord Narayan, the Lord had given him a son equal to himself. At the same time, Gargamuni indicated that this son would be disturbed by so many demons, and that Nanda should therefore be careful and protect him. So it's so interesting that he says, you should protect him so that he can grow without disturbance, thereby actually saying that there's going to be so many, heck of a lot of disturbances. Wow. So when Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita things like, one will not be disturbed by the occurrences of winter and summer seasons, maybe we should also take it in that vein. There's going to be a lot of disturbances. This means there's probably going to be a lot. If he's mentioned them, there's going to be a lot. And the knowledge that there will be a lot helps us to take it easy on ourselves. Don't be upset with yourself. When Krishna tells Arjuna, declare it boldly, my devotees will never be vanquished. And we should know there's going to be a lot of opposition. There's going to be some times when we really question it. And then we should know that Krishna is still going to be there. Maybe the point is that we just keep going. We have it in our minds that, okay, these things are coming. We have a roadmap, much like astrology. We have a guideline. There's going to be hiccups here, 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 and here. Now it's our job to try and navigate them and to have faith while we navigate. In this way, Gargamuni convinced Nanda Maharaj that Narayan himself had become his son. In various ways, he described the transcendental qualities of his son. After giving this information, Gargamuni returned to his home. Nanda Maharaj began to think of himself as the most fortunate person, and he was very satisfied to receive such a benediction in this way. That ever happened to somebody? You go to a festival, you meet some really, really awesomely spiritually minded people, and right after the festival, you feel like, I think I am transcendental, guys. I think I must possibly be the most transcendental person ever. I really feel enlightened in this moment. This is Nanda Maharaj. He's heard all of these things about both of these boys, and now they're in his home, just little children. It's like, wow, I feel great about this day. Yeah, the funny thing about Krishna is that feeling doesn't last very long in the minds of the devotees. And so we can take it as a precursor that feeling is also going to ebb and wane a little bit even within us. Some days we'll feel more spiritual than others. It's natural. Krishna has so many potencies that are acting. The universe has so many potencies that are acting on us. And so one day we feel like, wow, I think I feel really spiritually enlightened. And some of that is because of the association we've been keeping. And then a week later, we're like, I don't know what I was thinking. I'm just regular old me, just trying to get by. But this happens with the residents of Vrindavan. So Nanda Maharaj is thinking, I must be the most fortunate person. And then a few days later, he'll just look at his child, and that's just my child. I still have to make sure that my citizens are taken care of, my cows are taken care of, my family is taken care of, this village is taken care of. I have to make sure that I do the things that I need to do because it's all resting on me. Even though he knows that he has a supreme person in his home. So don't beat yourself up too much if those feelings of spiritual enlightenment kind of go like this. It's okay, it's natural. A short time after this incident, both Balaram and Krishna began to crawl on their hands and knees. When they were crawling like that, they pleased their mothers. The bells tied to their waist and ankles sounded fascinating, and they would move around very pleasingly. Sometimes, just like ordinary children, they would be frightened by others and would immediately hurry to their mothers for protection. Sometimes they would fall into the clay and mud of Vrindavan and would approach their mothers smeared with clay and saffron. They were actually smeared with saffron and sandalwood pulp by their mothers, but due to crawling over muddy clay, they would simultaneously smear their bodies with clay. So there was one beautiful pastime in this regard. They would say that Krishna and Balaram, as small crawling toddlers, they would hear the anklets, the ankle bells of other gopis. And they would think that those were their mothers. And they'd crawl up to those little, those other gopis, and they'd crawl up and they'd tug on the edges of their saris. And then the other gopis would turn around, "Oh, Krishna and Balaram, so good to see you." And then Krishna and Balaram would look up and realize that those weren't their mothers. And they would have such fear in their eyes. They would scuttle back and go and try and find their mothers with tears in their eyes. "Oh no, not my parent." And it's actually one of the funniest and best things when that actually happens in real life. You ever have a child forget that you are not their parent, and they come and they like cling on to your leg, and then you look down and you're like, "Oh look, unnamed child," and then the child looks up at you and they're like, "Oh no, this is an unnamed adult. I have no idea who this adult is." And they go like looking for their parent, but they still don't really want to let go yet. They're trying to just like figure out like, what is life right now, because I feel like I've been betrayed by life. But this is the sweetness of Krishna Balaram. The Supreme Person gets confused as to who their mother is. How incredible. The Supreme Person, who is seated within everyone's heart, is now crawling through mud. There's one beautiful story. Krishna arrives to look at Mother Yashoda. He's covered head to toe, complete head to toe in mud. His peacock feathers covered in, everything's covered in mud. In fact, she can't even see his eyes really. And so she takes her hands and she moves the mud from his eyes and a little away from his face and says, "Why are you like this? Why are you so restless? Why are you constantly rolling around in the mud? What were you, a pig in a former life? Like, what are you doing?" And Krishna doesn't say anything, but they say that he remembers his previous incarnation as Varaha, who was a boar. And he smiles at his mother and he just nods. "Yes, I was a pig." This is Krishna with a sense of humor. This is our Supreme Person. This is our God, who just lovingly is willing to forget everything in the loving exchanges with his devotees. This is what we have to look forward to. Loving exchanges where we just don't think about anything else except for, "Krishna, why are you so restless? What is happening with you?" So as soon as they would come crawling to their mothers, Yashoda and Rohini would take them on their laps and, covering them with the lower portion of their saris, allow them to suck their breasts. When the babies were sucking their breasts, the mothers would see small teeth coming in. Okay, also, can we just for a second imagine how adorable this is? This is the most adorable thing that I really like babies when they have no teeth, because they look like little old homeless people. And it's really adorable. And they've got like, especially when they're first born, they've got like skinny little frog legs. That was like one of my most favorite things about my daughter when she was first born. I was like, "Oh my God, please." Like her little long frog legs. Like I was like, this is too adorable. And then she had no teeth for several months, and that was so, like, I loved it. And then when she started to grow them, I remember thinking about this particular chapter. And really, it is amazing, but this is God, the Supreme Person. And now he's playing in the lap of his mother, just like an ordinary person. Oh, wow. Someone said didn't get teeth until 1.5 years. Yeah, it's cute as long as everything goes in the like usual trajectory of things, right? But then when it gets to like a year and a half, and then the kid's upset because the kid wants to eat, and then the mom's upset because the mom wants the kid to eat, and then everybody's thinking like, how long is this going to take? Like, what's happening here? And then you've got like doctors telling you, oh, these are the milestones that the children should be making, you know? And then you're just kind of wondering like, what's happening over here with me? But it all worked out. But Krishna and Balaram, they would age almost double the time of a normal child up until they got to looking about 16, and then they never really aged after that. So they would age like what they say is 1.5 times. So they often looked 1.5 times as old as they were. So if this is seeming like the story is going really fast, it's like, wait, 3 days, and then he killed a demon, and then 3 months, and then he kicked a cart, and then he killed another demon, and then did this. And it's like, how fast are you aging, God? Yeah, it's like 1.5 times faster than the usual children their age. Which is how we get to a point where at 7 or 8 years old, he kind of looked 14, 15. Where we get to a point where if he's like 11 or 12, he looked 16. A young 16, but he looked 16. So this is why we have this 1.5 times, and we have all of these like different things like how, what? But then because Krishna is ever youthful, in my tradition, our tradition, this is why you never see Krishna with a mustache. There are some traditions that do depict him with that, and it always looks to me as though you ever see somebody and for Halloween they just go get one and they just put it on. That's what it always looks like Krishna has done, because he does not age past 16. And so he can't grow one. I mean, he could if he wanted to, but he doesn't usually. So usually in my tradition of following bhakti, this is why you don't see Krishna with a mustache. This is why Krishna can be on a battlefield of Kurukshetra and he's in his 90s, and you see Arjuna, and Arjuna has a mustache and all these people, and then Krishna is still looking like baby-faced and youthful, and he's got grandchildren who are on the battlefield with him. And sometimes I feel like, did that ever get annoying? Like, you look at your grandfather, and your grandfather always looks a million times more handsome, even though you are like a carbon copy of your grandfather, but your grandfather still looks like he doesn't age. No, he doesn't. He doesn't. So yeah, he doesn't actually age past 16, so he doesn't really, still looks baby-faced and youthful. He's ever youthful, never yovanam. So now they have teeth. When the babies were sucking their breasts, the mothers would see small teeth coming in. Thus, their joy would be intensified to see their children grow. Sometimes the naughty babies would crawl up to the cowshed, catch the tail of a calf, and stand up. The calves, being disturbed, would immediately begin running here and there, and the children would be dragged over clay and cow dung. To see this fun, Yashoda and Rohini would call all their neighborhood friends, the gopis. Upon seeing these childhood pastimes of Lord Krishna, the gopis would be merged in transcendental bliss. In their enjoyment, they would laugh very loudly. Fun is in quotes, I feel like. Because there were some times where they also felt like, what's happening? Like, it's but that's still a calf, and calves don't know how to be humanly gentle. There was once my eldest brother got stepped on by a calf, and it was a calf. Those calves are big. When I was in Vrindavan, all of the calves wanted to play with me, and they're like big puppies, but they're still about the size of me. And so I'm like, you're a calf, and you don't understand the human gentility. I'm a frail human. According, and I'm not necessarily that frail as far as humans go, but in comparison to a calf, I'm much more frail. And so, I always kind of like had it in mind, like, this is great, but let's not get too energized with ourselves, because I'm also realizing that I am not going to grow past the size of this calf, and this calf has all of this latent energy and force behind it. So these are the calves that little baby Krishna and Balaram would grab onto the tails of, thinking, oh, we're going to have fun. And then the calves get scared because Balaram is all strength. Can you imagine the source of all strength just grabbing onto your back leg? And then you're small also, so you don't really, you're like, I don't know what's going on. So then they're dragging the children. So this is fun, but it's also anxiety. So we should also understand that sometimes fun for Krishna is anxiety for us. And then I try to tell him, I'm like, this is not fun for me. Just so we're clear. This is not the fun that I am having. You are laughing. I'm in anxiety. And so sometimes Krishna Balaram would be laughing happily, and their mothers would be in great anxiety. And because this is a podcast that is usually only an hour long, we'll pick up next week with how they continued to put their mothers into anxiety repeatedly. My guru Nanda Maharaj often would say that they would find Krishna is ever fresh and ever new. And so he would find ever fresh and ever new ways to trouble his mother every day. And then he would say, it's not trouble unless it's troubling you. Right? So it's not, he would stress her out. And he wouldn't stop until she was actually stressed out, because then it's not stress if she's not stressed. Right? When we think, oh, I passed that test. If it was easy, is it really a test? Not as far as material nature is concerned. And so sometimes we think, I've studied for this. I've got this. That's probably not the test. That was probably the review that came back around, which is great. But the fact that we are in anxiety simply means that we're going through the test. We're in the process of taking the test. Doesn't mean that we failed. It's natural. So if you are in anxiety, we can just remember that Krishna would put his mom into anxiety every day, and it would not be anxiety until she was filled with anxiety. And then sometimes he would, let up. Oh, okay, no problem. And maybe we will regale each other next time with a few more details about how he would put her into anxiety, because as unlimited as he is, he would find so many unlimited ways. Like, why? You are God. This is what you're putting your time into. I feel like Krishna, more saving, less anxiety. Stick with the goal. Let's stay with the program. But this is our Krishna. And no matter what, we find that we can't leave him. Maybe we can forsake everything else, but somehow not our relationship with him. And that relationship is as individual as we all are. That relationship is as individualized as we all are. Krishna knows how to deal with every single one of us according to what we need. So there's no one who can tell you exactly how Krishna will interact with you. We can give some guidelines about how he's interacted with others, but for you it might be unique and individualized, because we are all unique. And so Krishna's interaction with one person might not be Krishna's interaction with you. The perfection of one person's life might not be what your life looks like perfected. And that's okay. So the good news is, if we are in anxiety, it doesn't mean that we have failed. Simply means that we can now begin reminding Krishna of his promises. Fulfill the purports of all of your names. And I encourage you, if you don't know a name for Krishna to fit what you're going through, go to the Veda base online and just start searching for it. Look for it. I love researching, especially when I get to use it against God. When I get to use it for my own purposes, I really, that's where my heart really is, when I get to look up those things. I'm like, hey, do you remember when you saved this person and this person and this person, and thus we call you this? Okay, what's happening? Because my situation doesn't look so different. Here, I'll tell you why. And then I go and I outline my thesis of why I need saving. And then at the very end, I'm like, and so, per my last prayer, I will expect the mercy and the blessings and the savings any moment now. At your convenience, which usually means immediately. So I really do think we should get up every day and write some work emails to God. Dear God, per my last prayer, and maybe this is a series that we need to start. Per my last prayer, I'm gonna need some assistance and some help because I'm severely lacking. So once again, you could just hoist me on your back like a little backpack and carry me through whatever it is that I'm going through at your earliest convenience, i.e. immediately. That would be very much appreciated. Yours faithfully, Achuta because it's natural. We're all going through the things. So I think that it's our part as accountability partners to remind God of what his job is. I'm constantly being reminded of how limited I am. So why shouldn't I be constantly reminding God of how unlimited he is? He, she, they, together. All of them. We have so many unlimited forms of God. I feel like there's no reason not to call on them all. Radhashtami is coming, which is the appearance day of Srimati Radharani, which is going to be another special series of, I'm sure, wonderful things that we can talk about. But if Radhashtami is coming and she is known as the embodiment of all compassion, then sometimes I tap in. I'm like, hi, I feel like you've been quiet for a very long time, friend. And as a dear friend and self-appointed mother of the entire universe, I feel as though some of us might be lacking in the compassion aspect. I need some compassion. And since you seem to have an ocean of it, if you could please just spare a few drops. Because really, these are the realistic conversations that we need to have with our supreme friends. Otherwise, are they really our friends? Or are they just people that are over there and we're over here and never the two shall meet? God has dropped all of their guards and boundaries, and they've let us into the most vulnerable sides of them for our own benefit. Krishna has all of these unlimited names for our own benefit. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says you have invested all of your unlimited potency into your names, and thus you have names like Krishna and Govinda. But I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction or taste for them. How are we going to develop any attraction unless we make them real in our lives? And the way that we can make them real in our lives is by actively placing those names and Krishna's presence into our lives. And so maybe it starts with per our last prayer. Sometimes you need to do my last prayer. So I know that I did pray about this before. And, no rush. Just giving a gentle reminder that I'm still in the fires of whatever situation is going on. Just a gentle reminder. Just, sending up the idea that I am a finite jiva, living entity, and time might be running out. Just in case none of us felt a sense of urgency, and by none of us, I mean you, Lord. Faithfully yours. Respectfully. So this is what we can do. We can remind Krishna of his promises because he gives them. He wouldn't give them if he didn't want us to sweetly remind him. And that sweetness can also be spicy sometimes because God has a very evolved palate. So don't worry if you're like, maybe I'm too spicy for God. That's not a thing. Maybe I'm too sassy for God. That's not a thing. The person from whom all sassiness comes, that's not a thing. And so sometimes, I like to remind God, I'm like, look, everything and all that I am, you said comes from you anyway. So you knew who you got when you came here. You said you were seated in my heart. So you knew who you got when you came here. I can only be who I am. So I encourage us all to remind Krishna of his promises, which means we have to read up on what those promises are. Those promises are there to give us hope and encouragement, to join us back together when we feel like we are losing it. So yes, one of our friends is saying, don't be afraid to treat Krishna as a friend. Yeah, like, let that be the defining characteristic of our lives and our spiritual lives. What is the most important aspect of my spiritual life? The most important aspect of my spiritual life is that Krishna is my friend. Over and above all of the rules and regulations, and over and above all of this and that and everything else, Krishna is my friend. And because Krishna is my friend, I'm able to follow this rule or this regulation. Because Krishna is my friend, I now think, has my Krishna eaten today? Has my Krishna had anything to drink today? Did I speak to my friend today? Did I reach out and hold my friend's hand? Did I confide in my friend? Did I listen to what my friend had to say? All of that comes from Krishna is my friend. So don't be afraid to let the fact that Krishna is our friend become the mission statement of our lives. Spiritual, material, both. So that's it. If there are any more takeaways, please send them in. We have lots of them from YouTube. One of our regulars, Ashi, is saying that God's promise will never fail. That's also a meaning of the name Achyuta. Infallible means that Krishna never forgets his promises. And so I often lovingly yell at God, I'm named after you, and you say you never forget your promise, so why am I languishing? Help! We have to be able to yell out, help! The cowherd boys, who were such friends of Krishna, would often yell lovingly at him, Krishna, Krishna! Like exclamation points, there's not really such a thing as punctuation in Sanskrit, but they had them. Okay, the exclamation was there. When you call them twice, that's the exclamation, like Krishna, Krishna, oh no. If you call them 3 times, you're really, like, when they say 3 times, the emphasis is really there in Shastra and in spiritual literatures. But they would call him Krishna, Krishna, Mahabaho, almighty armed one, you have to save us. Not like, can you? Right? The cowherd boys would say, you must save us. We are your people. Like, who orders God around? His friends. So sometimes we have to lovingly beseechingly order God. Krishna, you have to save me. Please, I'm desperate. And then be open to him saving us, which may look like the way we want to be saved and may not look like the way we want to be saved. But do we trust Krishna? Do we trust him to do the saving? Krishna actually does love it when we order him around. And then that also means that he is very contrary by nature. Krishna loves doing things in a contrary manner, and he also loves indirect speech and indirect actions, which means he loves to indirectly bless us, which means the blessing comes indirectly. So then we order Krishna around, we're like, Krishna, save me. It's like, no problem. And then we're like, how is this a saving? What is this? And then, a year later we find out, okay, fine, yeah, it actually was a saving. But in the moment, we are definitely taken aback by how indirect he is in the saving. One beautiful takeaway. Here we go. Krishna understands that we're not perfect, and he doesn't demand perfection to bless us. Yeah, that's my favorite. He understands who we are, and he's always willing to meet us wherever we are. Also a favorite. He's changing the workings of the entire universe to prove to us that, to give us endless opportunities to take advantage of his blessings. And he's simply asking in return that we do our best. Also a favorite. All of these are favorites, Leeleshwari. That is enough for him. The names of Krishna are eternal and reveal an attribute of the Supreme Person. And each name reveals a promise of love. Yeah. I've been kind of waiting on this one for a long time to be able to say. There are promises. Krishna never breaks a promise, and we can lovingly hold Krishna accountable to all of his promises. Trust his word and remind yourself of who you really are, a devotee of Krishna, so dear and near to him, and that his promises are for each one of us. We are going to face many obstacles, but we can keep going and just wait to see how Krishna will fulfill his promises in our lives. Look for the blessings, look for the promises, look for the sweetness, and let yourself be convinced by his love. That's a good one. I think my final takeaway is to allow myself to be convinced, because there are so many times I beg for miracles and then I don't allow myself to stay convinced. The miracle happens. The thing that I desire happens. And I'm like, yeah, that happened. But Lord, what have you done for me lately? And I think I really need to remember, and I was just listening to something literally just before this podcast that was saying, when we are praying and we feel desperate for that answer, we should also be looking back in our lives at all the ways that God has previously answered us. Spiritual literature gives us a blueprint for how Krishna has answered so many prayers before even our lifetimes. But our own lifetimes give us so many examples of how Krishna has already answered us. He's answered innumerable miracles already. Are we looking back? Or are we just forgetting every time Krishna has dropped everything to come and save us? Sometimes we get hit with a disappointment so strong that we really do. We throw everything out that Krishna has ever done. And we judge him based on one aspect of a disappointment, not even looking at the outcome. We say, oh, Krishna, you've done this, this, and this to me, so now I'm never coming to you again. It's like, what about the decades when I was just dropping everything and saving you? Just because you can't see how I dropped everything and saved you this time, our friendship is nothing? And that always brings it back to me. Like, for me, when I think of Krishna, it's like, okay, wait, you're willing to throw away our entire relationship because you can't see the saving in the 5 minutes that you've been upset? I like to think of myself as more determined and loyal than that. So I have to be more determined and loyal than that. I have to be determined and loyal to have this relationship with Krishna. I want to persevere past my own mind. I am determined to have my friendship with Krishna. I am loyal to my friendship with Krishna because Krishna is determined to have a relationship with me, and he stays loyal. He is the most loyal. And now I'm going to go and look up a name for Krishna that means that he's the most loyal. I'll get back to you on that because I'm sure it's there. He has a name for every single attribute. He's the most loyal. I'm going to figure it out. And recently I've been on a binge of trying to find names of Krishna that reveal these promises. So if you're ever in need, like I said, go to the database, start looking things up. Just look up the word trust. Look up relationship. What's really cool is I did that one day, and looking at all of the ways that Srila Prabhupada speaks about relationship and what it means to be in relationship with Krishna, it was like one of the most beautiful things. And you could spend hours and not even get through a tenth of how many times Prabhupada speaks about relationship with Krishna. It's such a cool exercise. So now I'm going to go look up loyal and find the name for Krishna that means that he is the most loyal. And I'll get back to you. You'll probably see it on my Instagram story or maybe on Patreon or both. But if you have not joined Patreon and you are watching from YouTube, it is $5 a month. Okay, I know that all of you wind up spending more than $5 a month in whichever currency it is on loads of things. And I'm not saying that, I'm worth the $5 a month. What I am saying though is I've curated a lot of really cool things on there that you get for $5 a month, that once they hit the general populace will be more than $5 a month. But you can have it all for $5 USD a month. There's so much going on. And you get access to the Zoom rooms for these see-through meetings, which is really cool. I get to see you, you get to see me. I usually give the preference to the chat box over here before I look over at the chat box on YouTube. There's a whole bunch of things that happen. But I'll see everybody next week. Join Patreon if you can. It's really easy. Patreon/Achyutagopi. My name. ACY, no H. ACYUTA. GOPI. That's the easy part. Everybody gets confused on the Achyuta part, but that's actually the Sanskrit spelling for God's name. So when the people tell me, they're like, oh, you know what? You shouldn't be so caught up with how we spell it. I'm like, this is God's name. Like, what? Are you going to tell God he shouldn't be so caught up either? Anyhow, it's God's name. Spell it right. ACYUTA. GOPI. So please join Patreon if you can. It is a really wonderful place. The platform itself is like whatever. It's, a reflection of the material world. Good things, bad things, whatever. But what we're curating over there is amazing. And you definitely don't want to miss out. There's some stuff. I'm about to post more stuff today. I'll see you all soon. Thank you so much for being here with me. Thank you for being accountability partners for the Supreme Person. We get to hold God accountable for all of his promises. We get to hold us accountable for all of the ways that we will be lacking and in anxiety. We've gotten to hold each other and see each other through it one more day. So we've succeeded. You all are devotees of Krishna. Remember who you are. I don't care what stage of life you're in. I don't care what you have done or haven't done. You're a devotee of Krishna. That's it. It's the most simple identity to accept. I'm a devotee of Krishna. With that said, please know that this invaluable protection is with you, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Krishna Bhakti Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Shri Radha Govinda Dev Ki Jai. All glories to all of you. Fancy way. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. See you all again next week. Probably on a Monday again, because it seems to be working for all of us. See you all soon.